We're excited to announce the first ever, first of its kind higher education podcast conference, brought to you by Edu Alliance, the Edub Experience, and Podium. This is happening Saturday, July 12th at the University of Illinois Chicago campus. This is an in-person event, one day only, the first of its kind. This is for people working in and around higher education who are interested in starting a podcast, who may have a podcast, want to learn more about podcasting. So if you want to be there, please go to higheredpodcon.com. That's higheredpodcon.com to learn how you can get your early bird registration, see who the keynote will be, and how you can submit proposals to be a part of this amazing inaugural conference. So that, again, go to higheredpodcon.com to learn more.
Welcome back, everybody. It's your time to ed up on the Ed Up Experience podcast, where we make education your business. This is Dr. Joe Salustio back with you on another episode, and boy, oh boy, I have energy today. So get ready for a wild and wacky podcast. I want to get a couple things out of the way. I've been doing this on a lot of the episodes over the last couple of months because I feel like it's important to tell the community, and this is the only way I could tell you. Number one, on July 12th, 2025, which means this episode is being recorded prior to July 12th, 2025, because co-founder Elvin Freitas has told me to never to stop putting timestamps on these podcasts because know when we're going to release them. But Higher Ed PodCon is happening, the first ever, first of its kind, inaugural higher education podcasting event put on by the Ed Up Experience podcast on the campus of the University of Illinois Chicago in Chicago, Illinois on July 12th. It's a Saturday. We are creating a conference dedicated to podcasting in higher education, podcasting for enrollment, podcasting for marketing, podcasting for alumni engagement, podcasting for leadership. Registration is open. It's at Higher Ed PodCon. Super easy, right? higheredpodcon.com. And we look forward to seeing you. We had a really, really great registration day yesterday, and it's just growing really rapidly. I think the value of podcasting in higher ed is going to be amazing to celebrate on July 12th in Chicago. And number two, I've been saying it, and I'm just not seeing things come in as fast as I had hoped. We've taken a part of our website. We have created EdUp editorials, which gives our colleagues across higher education a chance to write articles that we will publish. We publish the article at the Ed Up Experience, and we send it out and promote it to our global audience. And it gives you an opportunity on your campus to tell us some good things that are happening that may not get into a trade publication because it doesn't have a journalistic negative angle to it. Maybe it's a new program. Maybe it's a balanced budget that you had this year. Maybe it's something. Get somebody to write us an article. We will publish it, promote it, get you a link, and send it out to our email list and through LinkedIn. So pen and paper, AI, I don't care, whatever you got to do, sit down and write some articles, and you can submit those to edup@edupexperience.com, or just send it to me or Elvin, and we will get it up. Okay, enough of that. And I've had to reschedule on my guest like 3 times, so he's sitting here listening to me talk, and he's probably like, just be quiet and get me on the microphone. And I want to oblige him. Ladies and gentlemen, he is Dr. John Hoffman. He is the president at Bemidji State University. John, welcome to Net Up Mike. How are you?
I am doing great. It is good to see you this morning as I identify the time of our podcast, but it is great to see you and to finally connect.
Yeah, the last time I saw you, John, you were on a stage at the Ask You annual conference, presenting on student success and mental health, and boy, oh boy, important topics. And I want to get to those because, in this world of disruption we live, the students are still at the center of everything we do. We still got to do the work. But lay the groundwork for us. Where's Bemidji State University? Tell us about it. Who do you serve, and how do you serve them?
Oh, what a great cue up for us. Our favorite, piece as president, going to tell a little bit of our story. So Bemidji State University, and it is also Northwest Technical College, or NTC, Bemidji's Technical College, a 2-for-1. We are in North Central Minnesota, and we take great pride in bringing people together. It's, our why is tied to our who. And so half of our students are first generation college students. 92% of them rely on financial aid to go to college. We have about a third of our students are adult learners, and 71% are bringing in transfer credits as they come to us.
71%?
71%, wow. Yes. And a truly distinctive part of being in north central Minnesota is we are located within the heart of the state's three largest Native nations. 9% of our students at Bemidji State, 15% at NTC are American Indian. If we were a single institution, we would have the largest American Indian population of any institution in the state of Minnesota, including a great big university down in the Twin Cities. Or to say it just one other way, collectively, BSU and NTC serve about 3.5% of the students in the Minnesota state system, but we serve 23.5% of the American Indians who go to college in Min State. So it's a real pride point for us in our location and in the work that we do.
Amazing.
I love that.
Yes.
I love that. Tribal colleges and universities, or those Native American students, don't get enough cred. Let's just be honest. You don't get enough microphone time, article time, TV, whatever. You don't get enough time to talk about how important that is to the fabric of this country. Do you think we need to do more to celebrate that?
Absolutely. So obviously I love to see at an institution like ours, as we bring together folks from all across Minnesota, and we really represent the state well. And so I love to see that integrative space, but we need to be lifting up tribal college education. We've got amazing partners around us at Red Lake Nation College, White Earth Tribal Community College, Leech Lake Tribal and Community College, and even just a little further over at Fond du Lac Tribal and Community College. These institutions are lifting up Indigenous ways of knowing, doing, and being, things that folks learn about the world, enhancing that knowledge. And then when they come, because a large number of our American Indians transfer to us from those tribal colleges, they come in with a strength of identity and knowledge. And so one of our strategic priorities as an institution is Nisidodating. It is an Ojibwe term that means having mutual understanding and respect. At the core is this idea of learning from one another together in mutuality. And it is something that I believe sets our institution and the experience that our students receive apart from something just about anywhere else in the country, if not the world.
Nailed it.
I want to talk about your transfer population. 71%. I mean, that's just so significant, because it's not like when you understand higher education, which I know a lot of our listeners do, and maybe the casual listener, or the casual administrator, or maybe even somebody that studies higher ed understands it. And you have policies, and you have students, and you have just sort of the regular movements of the operation. But when you have a really, really large transfer population like that, it changes the way you have to think about higher education. It changes the way you have to operate your campus. It changes the way your administrators and faculty have to think about serving students. It's a completely different game than a traditional first-time, full-time freshman coming in as a freshman and going through and getting a 4-year degree. When you're dealing with transfer credit, it puts a lot of variability on your operation. Can you just talk about that a little bit? Because that is a big time number.
Well, it's a big time number, and we like to use the term mobility to be all inclusive, because it means so many different things for different students. The short of it, we are trying to build a new version of who we've always been. I think that is a critical aspect of the work that we're doing today. What that means, very few of our students come in without any credits and have this cohesive general ed experience. Their lower division courses, their first 2 years, everything's pulled together. They transition into their major, and that's a small number of students for us. Instead, some students are picking up, traditional age students have picked up those courses in high school that they're bringing in with them. Others have gone intentionally to a 2-year institution with a plan of those 2+2 pathways to get to their degree. But in northern Minnesota, we also have a ton of students who come to us with credits from just a slew of different institutions they've picked up along the way.
Or couldn't find their place, right? They couldn't find their place, and so they end up with you because they see that that's the place now, but now they've got all of this jumbled up credit that has to be sifted through.
Exactly. And that's, so the strength of that, we know that the enrollment cliff is, dawning upon us. For us, this means we have multiple streams of enrollment that are coming to us. We have traditional age students. That is, core bread and butter to who we are, but then different types of transfer students who are engaging in this mobility, and then adult learners. I like to talk about, some of our demographics in northern Minnesota. For every individual age 15 to 25 in northern Minnesota, there are 1.6 individuals age 25 and older with some college and no degree.
Tell them like it is.
Yeah. And that's a blue ocean for us in terms of opportunities to serve and to really meet significant workforce needs across northern Minnesota. So it's exciting work.
Really is. And when you start to think about that 1.6 adults with some college, no degree, you, much like we've talked about in the podcast many, many, many times, you do have a market. There is a market of students out there that can be engaged. Now, you have to do it very intentionally, and you have to almost re-engineer the value of higher education in their eyes because they stopped out for some reason or they got credit and didn't come back for some reason. And value proposition for colleges and universities, or the competitive advantage for colleges and universities, does matter. Sometimes it's a program that gives a college advantage. Sometimes it's the place, it's the atmosphere, it's the service. Sometimes, and any combination of those things. How do you think about engaging that adult population with what you offer at Bemidji State? Is it, how are you engaging them? Are you having to resell the value of how do you think the general population is going, you know what, I do need more skills? Or is it a little bit of both or neither?
It's all the above and then some. It's part of what is so special about being BSU and NTC, 2-year technical college and a 4-year comprehensive university with, graduate as well as undergraduate programs. So it is that full breadth working together in partnership. And we are seeing a lot of growth in the customized training space. Something that's not a degree, it's a certification or certificate or credential of various forms. It's continuing development, but then thinking about what are the pathways through all of this that different types of students are going to take at different points in their lives to take the next step. And then how do we, as they finish whatever step it is that they've taken, here's the next one. When the time is right, here's a couple additional steps that you can take, and here's how we're going to be there ready for you when the time is right for you to take your next step.
Let's go.
That sounds good to me. But this journey hasn't been easy for you. You came into the role in what many would consider a turnaround situation. The direction of the school of Bemidji State wasn't maybe where everybody needed it or wanted it to be. You step in, you're in your 3rd year, right?
Yep.
That 3-year mark is funny because I've talked to, so many college presidents that go, gosh, it takes 2 years to get through the cycle. And in that 3rd year, I can really start to create that longer term change because I just got to clean things up in the first 2 years. And you've done that. Can you tell your story a little bit of what it was like coming in and what your 3-year journey has looked like?
Well, let me first step back and say this. You take the best president in the country. That's not me, but you take the best president. They have a long storied career with great success at an institution, and whoever comes in after them is going to look back and say, "Wow, there's going to be some gaps. There always are. That's just part of succession and transition." We'll note that I came in, on the tails of the pandemic at Bemidji State. They had lost a third of their enrollment through the pandemic. Deficits at both institutions were north of 20% of total revenues. It was a unfolding crisis type of situation. I have to say that the team of folks, if there's been anything that I've done, it's been surrounding myself with a team of highly qualified. They're young, they're diverse in terms of the senior leadership of the institution, but they've delivered outcomes. So 2 years later, the hard work. We've reduced our workforce by more than 20%.
Wow.
And
that's not easy work. Let's just say, we can say it in a sentence, like we've reduced the workforce by 20%. It's a really simple sentence to say, and the emotion, the sleepless nights, the thought process, for anybody that has had to do that, to be the one to deliver that message, it's not as easy as that sentence goes, just, stating the obvious.
And in a small college town, you take that total number of jobs that were there 3 years ago that are not there now, it's almost 1.25% of the workforce in our community. So it affects every student, every employee, neighbors in the community. Let me be really clear. These have been bad decisions. Perhaps the alternatives were worse decisions, but it doesn't change the fact that when a faculty member chooses to bring their family to North Central Minnesota, they choose our students, they choose our community, they buy a home, they invest in the schools, and they earn tenure, and then we violate that sacred trust through reductions and retrenchments. There is nothing about that is ever a good decision, and I'll never really sleep well about that.
But also necessary to save an institution not going in the right direction. So it is.
And that's, I think the point is, the credit to the team is, if we're going to make these difficult decisions, we're going to make sure that we get the outcomes associated with it. So new student enrollment's been up each of the past 2 years. Total enrollment is up this last year. At the Tech College, we're up by more than a third.
Wow.
Retention rates are up 6% over the last 5 years at Bemidji State. Our course completion rates are up in every area and for every demographic group at the Tech College. So the outcomes are there. We have centered students as we have made the decisions, and yes, students are hurting too, because in some cases it's a favorite professor. It touches everybody, but I am impressed with the leadership and the folks in our community in the way that we have put students first, and also been mindful of our local community as we have made the decisions and are charting a path forward.
Epic.
One thing you mentioned in there, just to bring it back around to the student, is a lesser known topic. Well, it's a known topic, but not often discussed in the idea of retention. And we talk about retention a lot, and I think people who work outside of higher education, who write and talk about higher education, talk about retention and persistence as these big concepts and know about them. But then you get down to something like successful course completion, and the amount of that seemingly simple concept, and the amount of work that goes into helping a student get through that course and supporting them through the course and tracking successful course completion feeds retention, feeds persistence. We talk about the big topic. Can you talk a little bit about how, successful course completion? What does that mean? How do you talk about that? And is it something that you track? Is it just something that magically happens?
It is something that we track, and it's definitely not something that magically happens.
That was a rhetorical. I knew you were going to say that, John.
Yes, but so I will say this: I am a skeptic of across the board types of actions. So year one, we're making cuts, and we make it clear we are going to prioritize enrollment We're going to prioritize student success. We're going to protect our work in fundraising, and then also this NISA dotting work that I talked about early on. Those were areas that we decided we're protecting, and that's hard to see some areas where, in fact, we hired new employees and in recruitment and admission at the same time that we were letting others go.
Right.
But those investments and then restructuring our student success program, creating core advising support for all students helps. But what I'm perhaps most excited, a Build the Dam project initiated by our faculty, seeing the importance of student success and retention, drilling down, looking at the DWF rates on their own. This isn't coming from administration. This is coming from our faculty as an opportunity to dig in and look for the opportunities. Where do we find the gaps? And then how do we correct those? And so that shifts the space for administrators into how do we help you accomplish your goal? Now, I'll be quick to say there's a lot of places where processes worked differently, where administrators have had to make difficult decisions and folks are coming along with it. But this is an area where I've seen a lot of leadership from the ground up, from faculty, from student affairs educators, initiating the work, leading the way, and ensuring that that's a part of the future that we build.
Yeah, you mentioned something else. I get going on this stuff because I was in it for so long, but DFW rates, how many students are getting a D, an F, or withdrawing from the course as a percentage versus your overall, and how many Ds versus Fs versus Ws, and you've got to track those nuances, especially as you're dealing with a high Pell population who, have economic challenges, who are a fender bender away from going, I just don't know if I can do this anymore. It's the amount of data and the amount of oversight you need and the metrics in higher education is just insane because we're looking at all these risk factors all the time. And I think we don't talk about it enough, how hard the work of retention really is. What do you think?
It's how hard it is, and it's also how compelling the work is. So let me just kind of do an extension piece here, because it's hard work. You've got to do the analysis. You've got to do the disaggregations. You've got to be intentional about your practices. But we have one of the other outcomes we've had at both institutions is huge increases in fundraising. So I can tell you that at Bemidji State, the last 3 years, we just passed increasing our fundraising total for the prior 6 years combined. We may, by the end of this year, have raised more dollars than in the past 7 years combined. And so as we do that work, it's about relationships, but it's about strategy. And I have to tell you, we're institutions where there's a long history of folks delving into scholarship support, but we're seeing more and more of those sophisticated donors who are interested in, I want to support that retention work you're doing, that, the things that faculty are doing to lower the DFW rate. They want to be a part of that because they see that as an opportunity to change lives in the same way that scholarships have in the past. And so those fundraising outcomes have been, a great extension of the work we've done around student success.
I got something for this.
Cash moves everything around me. Green, get the money. Dollar bill, yo.
Perfect setup.
Yes.
But as cold as that sounds, the more money you can take in, you can allocate to students and the economic challenges they have, the better off they're going to be, the more students you graduate, and the more alumni you can come back around and ask for more support. I mean, it is this virtuous cycle of support that we perpetuate, right?
Well, and let me say this, we've made several multi-million dollar asks over the last couple of years. In every instance, there have been tears in the eyes of the donor that we've approached. In some cases, they've, this was the right time, and others, not now, but at some point. But they have been so moved by the opportunity to contribute to their alma mater in ways that are going to change the lives of students. It's, I think sometimes there's a sense out there that, people are, I'm making this donation and what are the things I'm going to get back, for my business, for me, for my reputation and stuff. And perhaps that happens in some other spaces. I will tell you that I have just been overwhelmed by the philanthropic, charitable heart of the alumni who support our two institutions.
We love that. That comes around to a broader point that I think is worth talking about. If you think about that, you have a donor who's moved, tears in their eyes, to help students persist and graduate. Mm-hmm. Simultaneously, there's a big question on the value of a college degree. Or at least there's a question of at least we perceive statistically, because somebody ran some survey, that the public no longer values a college degree. I don't see that personally. I don't see it in my family. I don't see it in my conversations. And I'm not even talking about the podcast, because I'm talking to a bunch of higher ed people here. So somebody can come on and say, well, Joe, you only talk to presidents, of course. No, I'm talking about in my life. I have a lot of other things that I do outside of the podcast, right? And I talk to people all the time, and I just don't get that. I don't talk to people and they go, I'm just really not sure as a parent if the college is worth it anymore. I'm talking to them and they're going, I am sending my kid to college. They are going to get a college education. I'll be damned if I'm going to die. I'll roll over in my grave if I don't give them the same opportunity that I had. I just don't see it. And maybe it's me. Now, I get the skill stuff, because that conversation happens too. Like, I want my kid, or as an adult, because I'm not talking just about kids. I have a lot of adults that I talk to too. They're like, yeah, I need to get new skills. I'm going to go to this job. I'm going to take that. I'm going to get that. I'm going to go here. I'm going to do that. So I do get a lot of the lifelong learning stuff. But in terms of the value of a college degree, I'm just not hearing it. What are you hearing? And, that just brings us back around to this. If you have donors who are tears in their eyes donating for the value of getting through college, is that a real thing? Am I underselling the fact? What do you think?
Higher Ed PodCon is coming. Go to higheredpodcon.com. That's higheredpodcon.com to learn more.
Well, from a donor perspective, it's easy. I haven't run into anybody who's had that question. They see the value. This college changed their life. They see how it continues to change. They want to invest. They believe there's going to be a significant return on investment. I will say that Bemidji is located in Beltrami County, which has the second highest poverty rate in the state of Minnesota. You look across north central Minnesota, the lowest college going rate of the highest high school graduates in the region. And it's a sophisticated calculus that students engage in. In many cases, they're coming out of high school. Yeah, I want to go to college. Yep, I believe I will make more money. Yes, I believe there's really good outcomes with this. And in the short term, at least, I've got a well-paying job at Home Depot. My family needs me to be contributing to the rent or to the mortgage. There's really sophisticated questions that folks go through in terms of opportunity cost, cost of tuition, cost, the other pieces that go into that space. And so that's why I think we're seeing this larger number of students with transfer credits, these diversified pathways. We have to listen to students and the calculus that they're doing as they're making decisions about going to college. And yes, there's a group of folks out there that, are trying to spin this narrative that college, isn't worth it. As I engage in our community, I don't hear a lot of traction about that. Instead, I hear a lot of traction about folks doing really sophisticated analyses about when is the right time for me and how can I get there. I will say too, the pandemic for some, coming out of high school, taking classes in my bedroom, that wasn't for me. I want to make sure that colleges, colleges have to figure this out. And another prop to our faculty, they've been engaging in a lot of what we call multimodal education. So, I'm teaching a class in person, 10, 11 students sign up for the class. Well, that class isn't going to make financially, that doesn't make sense for us. But instead of just kicking those students over into an online version of the class, the faculty have agreed to work, I'm going to teach these 12 students in person, and I'm going to fill the next 20, 30 seats in my class with either hybrid or asynchronous students who are completing. It's more work for me as a faculty member because different students in the same class are taking the class in different ways, but it helps the institution financially. And in some ways, it creates some new opportunities for me to build some multi-generational just connections between students as they engage with the content. And that's when I talk about creating a new version of who we've always been. That's something, a place where our faculty have just done some great work.
When you came on, you said our why is tied to our who. Mm-hmm. I like that way you put that a lot because it's so true, right? The why is tied to the who. I do think you have to define the who. In higher ed, typically, we don't do a really good job of defining the who. I've been in meetings myself. I've consulted for institutions through various, and I'll hear our students. And it's like, well, who exactly are we talking about? Because if we don't define that, it leaves our operations flat, right? If we're talking about a transfer credit adult student and we put them through the policy structure of a 18-year-old expected first-time full-time freshman, it fails that adult student. And so sometimes we don't define the who. How do you think about that? And you and your leadership team is our why defines the who. Our why is tied to our who is the way you say it. But how do you define the who, and how much of your conversation is built around that?
Well, so let's go on a visualization exercise quick. If you imagine the state of Minnesota, and Minnesota has a reputation for having a ton of universities. We know that 70 to 80% of students who go to a public university attend an institution within 50 miles of campus. A little bit of skew there because of city impact, but students go, local. So we took a map of Minnesota and the surrounding states, put a dot down there for every university, and took a 50-mile radius and drew a circle around. And what you see throughout the south and the middle of the state, along the western and eastern sides, a lot of circles and a lot of overlap. But then you go up to north central Minnesota, take Bemidji, and give me a little bit of latitude here. You go 25 miles east of town and put your dot down there. You can now draw a 100-mile radius around that dot, and there's essentially no overlap. So it is a fundamentally different question. Fun statistic. So 60% of our in-person students, much more traditional age students, come from within 150 miles of campus. And 60% of our adult learners, mostly online, come from within 150 miles of our campus. Heavily rural communities, they see relevance in the way we teach and the content that we're teaching to the communities they live in and the work that they want to do. And so that, these are elements that drive that who. And of course, we've got some phenomenal programs that have national draw, technology, art, and design, a unique program, the nation's only exhibit display preparation program, a wildlife biology program and aquatics. Well, 10,000 lakes in Minnesota. There's one institution located public institution located on the shores of a lake, and that's us in the northern woods. So a natural fit with where we're at, an exceptional music program, psychology, social work, nursing tied to the largest rural healthcare provider in our area. It's, we see a lot of that has a broad draw, but the core starts in Bemidji and building those circles out from there and serving that region.
I've talked to so many people, and at the president level, your stats. Like the way you repeated that, you're not reading anything. Your student statistics. The ranges, the geography, retention, the demographics. I will tell you that I've interviewed many people that are reading those. I know you're not reading those. I know those are coming off the top of the dome, as they say, which tells me you're very close to the operational parts of the business. And I do believe that there are a lot of different types of presidents, many who are off, sort of fundraising, but the student leverage, the way the student is now, the consumer, is making the top leadership get much closer than they have ever been intertwined, because technology, the buying habits, it's all tied together. So as a leader of an institution now, you have to know the students. You can't just read it from a piece of paper. You have to know it, because the students want to know that you know it. The students want to know that they're leaders who are now more visible than they've ever been through social media, whether you like it or not, because we could take a picture of anybody and post online. They want to know that person's accessible and that the president knows who they are, or else they just don't go to that school. How important is it for you to be close to the business, close to the layup drills, if you will?
Essential. I think one of the first and most important jobs of a president is to be a student of the students, a student of the institution. And it does come back. You've asked this question a couple different ways about that value proposition. And, I that complex calculus that folks engage in. But we do need to be telling that story. We do need to be advocates for our industry and help remind folks this is why we're doing some of this. Higher education is expensive. I would say that, if I'm comparing Bemidji State and NTC to the competition, we are highly affordable. If I am talking with students, I have to talk with our students. I have to talk about how the costs are manageable, because we may be less expensive than everybody else, but it is still a significant investment to say, I'm going to walk away from a job. I'm going to spend time in class that I'm paying tuition for, to do that for a few years to get to that next level. And so they need to know that we've got confidence that we're assessing everything, that we can demonstrate to them that the mission of the institution will be realized by them personally as they walk across the stage and go into the workforce and communities post-graduation.
Victory!
Well, you've said a lot, John. I want to give you the last question before we bring you back for a subscriber-only episode. I'm going to ask you about your leadership and the future of higher ed. But for this main episode, I'm leaving you with an open mic. And the question is, what else do you want to say about Bemidji State University or Northwest Technical College that you would like our audience to take away?
Let me make this a little bit personal. I will say that I like to say that I am my father's son in many ways. He was a pretty special guy, and he talked a lot about economic development. And for him, as a small town business person, he talked about the importance of taking care of your customers, taking care of your employees, but also taking care of the business next door. And we work and function within systems that sometimes get forgotten. If we're just focused on ourselves, and I think given the financial challenges, the external threats that we're facing, it's very easy for colleges and universities to look inward and say, we got to take care of ourselves. We just got to focus on ourselves right now and buckle down and get through the storm. That, I believe, is a mistake. I believe that we have got, the way we buckle down is we look external and we look at who are the businesses and industries around us, who are the communities around us, where's the nonprofits around us, what do they need? Because it's through building the networks, that's where the strength is at. The strength is not in the nodes, each of the different pieces in the map. The strength is in the webs that pull these different pieces together, especially in rural spaces like we're in. And so I think that now, under duress, is the most important time for us to be thinking externally around and how we engage in that space. I think that's how we build the capacity to weather the storms ahead of us and to do it in ways that enhance our values.
But he was there. I think my mic just cut out. I said I only rescheduled him 47 times. But we did do it, and we're going to bring him back for a subscriber-only mini episode here in just a second. But ladies and gentlemen, let me get him out of here the way he deserves. He's Dr. John Hoffman. He is the president of Bemidji State University and Northwest Technical College. And you've just upped. All right, guys, we're back with John. We're going to do a quick subscriber-only episode. And, John, I've got really two main questions for you. First, 3 years into a presidency, and just a bit about your background. You came from student affairs, student work, faculty, teaching. You've sort of from the student faculty background. And you step in as president at Bemidji State University. What has surprised you about the college presidency? Maybe a not-so-great surprise. And maybe one thing, and then one thing that was like, you know what, this is exactly what I thought it was. I can do this. But what was one thing that was really unexpected or maybe an unpleasant surprise?
So I came in as a student affairs president, as you mentioned, and I did spend some time as faculty. I've got some diverse pathways along there, but I did not know how radical a student affairs presidency can be. So as I started talking about building a senior leadership team and organizing around team leadership, everybody was, that sounds great, started nodding. But the instincts built into higher education are structural. Yes. Where's the vote? Who do I report to? What is my silo? Those kinds of things. And that's just not the way we think in student affairs. And so building this team culture has been a much bigger radical departure from the past than I anticipated. Now, if there's a success in there, I mentioned this in the main podcast. I have hired an exceptional team, young, diverse, hungry, highly skilled. So I've had a great interim provost who's helped us here the last year at Bemidji State, works in close, that's Jeff Hewlin, works in close partnership with Kitmani Kwanchow, the executive vice president and academic leader over at the Tech College. They work, Chris, I'm going to go through the list. Chrissy Fenner, our vice president for finance administration, young, knows her numbers, but is really skilled at communicating, helping people to understand what the numbers are, what they mean, how to engage with them in space. And she works closely with Megan Zothman, our campus resource person, truly committed to enhancing human potential. Really difficult work to do in the time of making cuts, but doing it in ways to lift folks up and engage in that design thinking. Our core student focused team, enrollment management, Ben Hoffman, our vice president for American Indian Student Success, Chrissy Downwin, our senior student affairs officer, Kevin Stensberg, and then our athletic director, Britt Lauritsen. Truly student-centered folks, love students, just to perhaps a fault at times, committed to their success. And then I just brought in a rock star young fundraiser, Alyssa Joseph, AJ, and she works closely with Enoch Preciado, our head of staff, just committed to raising the outcomes by building the case. And that team, they are committed to each other. They're committed to each person around the table becoming the best version of themselves. And because the commitment is so clear, they can engage in the really difficult conversations about forging a path. So I appreciate you giving me a moment to do the shout out. Team.
Recognizing it's true. You surround yourself with people who are smarter. And yes, right. It absolutely is the truth. And how many, excuse me, people will come on and say something like, well, my leadership team is really synergistic and they're working just so closely together. And then I'll see some article come out, or I'll hear from the back channels like, that is so not true. It is completely siloed. Yes, sometimes it's lip service. I can hear in your voice it's not. And if you're seeing results, it's not. And that's important when you find that leadership team where they're actually truly committed to each other and committed to the students, not maneuvering maneuvering is just the best way to say it. Everybody's maneuvering for something. When that maneuvering stops and the student commitment takes over, it is really beautiful to have a team like that. So I'm really happy to hear you say that, and they deserve the recognition and credit that you've given them, because it is not easy work, the work that we do. It is rewarding, hard work. And as we go to the next topic and final topic, we want to ask you about what you see for the future of higher education.
Whether you credit this to, a 60-year-old song by the Byrds, or, some ancient wisdom literature from the Middle East, for everything there is a season, for every time there is a purpose. And, I grew up thinking, about a pendulum, and, I mentioned that I was my father's son, and so I see the energy in the when the pendulum is in the middle. But being in the North and listening and learning from my American and Indian peers, instead of that back and forth, there is this cycle. If you're from my generation, you can hear the birds singing, turn, turn, turn. That the circle going in that space. And we've got big questions. How big is the circle? Is this going to be something that's going to cycle around in 2 years and 4 years and 8 years? What's going to happen along the way? I don't want to miss the significance of the challenge that we're in, and the historic, kinds of things that we're facing. But I will also say that if you look at that original source, Ecclesiastes, that whole book, that whole work was written around the concept of meaning. And I find a lot of joy when I get the opportunities to engage with our students, or with our alumni, or, with faculty and student affairs folks who have, done something really special, really made a difference in the life of a student. There's clearly moments of joy, but the sustaining piece, I think, for the job right now is, you got to focus on that question of meaning. This larger work was all about meaning. And sometimes it means coming home at the end of the day, and today was not a joyful day at work. It was hard. I made some bad decisions. Again, maybe they were the best of the alternatives, but they were still bad decisions. But I hope that I made that decision with as much grace and care as possible. And you find meaning at the end of the day by believing that you made the bad decision in the best way possible, and in a way that hopefully is mindful of whatever that larger circle or cycle is leading us toward.
So well said. Thank you for giving us this insight for our subscribers, President Hoffman. We really appreciate it. And this is how we learn. We have to learn from people doing the job. We have to learn from people doing the same jobs as we are in different ways. That's why we do this podcast here at the EdUp Experience with our guest today, Dr. John Hoffman. He's president of Bemidji State University and Northwest Technical College, and he's an amazing man to work for. Just ask his team, I can tell you that. You've just EdUp'd.
Did you buy your tickets yet? Higher Education's first podcast conference is coming July 12th. Go to higheredpodcon.com, higheredpodcon.com. Get your tickets.